Joining me now, Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney. Premier, always good to have you on the program. We got to start, obviously, with the news that Joe Biden, the President of the United States, on his first night, rescinded the Keystone XL permit. He promised to do this for years. He campaigned on it. He's done it. Justin Trudeau is talking to him tomorrow, as you know. What do you want the Prime Minister to say to President Biden?
Well, first of all, that the U.S. should respect its closest friend and ally and sit down with us and talk about the issue in a broader context of a continental approach to energy security, environment, and climate action. That's what the Prime Minister said he was going to do, and surely he should convey a message that the respect for America's closest friend and ally requires at least listening to us about this. So failing that, I believe the Prime Minister should say that there will be targeted reprisals, because this is a direct attack on Canada's vital economic interests, our largest industry, by far our largest export to the United States, nearly $100 billion of energy that we export there, most of it coming from Alberta. If we do not respond, this will create, I think, a very troubling precedent where many of the groups behind this decision will now seek to apply a similar presidential veto on long-standing pipelines that are worth $100 billion of value every year to Canada's economy.
Okay, now you know when Barack Obama vetoed this 3 days after Justin Trudeau became the Prime Minister in 2015, there was no sanctions then. Now you're calling for sanctions, and I appreciate that, which is, you know, starting a trade war over an unfinished pipeline. And believe me when I say there's thousands of jobs on the line here, and I don't want to minimize that, is a big deal. Can you be specific what kind of sanctions specifically you would like?
But first, let me say, this would not be starting a trade war. It would be responding to one that began yesterday in the United States. This is existing infrastructure. It's about a presidential permit for a piece of infrastructure that crosses the border that was installed last summer in a project co-owned by a Canadian government. This is in clear violation of the legacy provisions of NAFTA that were carried forward into the new trade agreement, because a foreign government cannot retroactively change regulations in a way that will damage investors. At the very least, why is the federal government not saying that there should be compensation for TC Energy that has spent billions of dollars on this project in good faith following the U.S. regulatory?
But are you just, before I get to the sanctions, so you're saying that you want a NAFTA-style challenge on this because I have no doubt there may be. That won't, you know, that will not bring the pipeline back. That would take years and years and years. As TC Energy, they kind of think it's dead.
Well, I'm saying at the very least, the federal government should be talking about compensation for a major Canadian company and a Canadian government, the government of Alberta, that invested $1 billion in this project, because this is a retroactive decision by the U.S. That changes a regulation after an investment was made. That is bad faith. That's not how you treat a friend and an ally. And so I'm proposing an off-ramp for the administration to talk to us about how Keystone could fit in the context of the Trudeau government's broader climate strategy. But if the Trudeau government believes that NAFTA and the new trade agreement have value, they have to defend it and its principles. And we cannot allow, you're quite right, the failure by the Trudeau government to respond meaningfully to the Obama veto in 2015, I believe encouraged yesterday's decision, and it will further embolden those organizations trying to kill all of the energy infrastructure.
Okay, but again, to be fair, sir, this was, you know, this was coming. I mean, it's not like no one hid this. No one forced you to invest $1 billion when many people, and you know the opposition in Alberta, saying Jason Kenney gambled on this. They knew if Biden won, he would kill this, and yet you still invested $1 billion. But can you just answer the question about the sanctions? What specific ones you'd like?
Sure. Well, the Alberta NDP always opposed this project. And the point is, it would not have started. We've created thousands of jobs in the past year, would not have started without our investment. And TC Energy has spent, I think, over $7 billion. So when I talk about sanctions, they would be targeted, when last year, by the way, the Trump President Trump campaigned far more volubly on ripping up NAFTA and imposing steel tariffs. We didn't just accept that and move on, which is now Ottawa's response to yesterday's insulting action. We stood up and fought for Canadian jobs. That we have about a $10 billion trade with the U.S. in steel and aluminum, a few thousand workers, God bless them. We imposed countervailing tariffs on the United States for President Trump's unfair actions, and they backed up as a result. Why are hundreds of thousands of energy workers worth less of a fight than a few thousand steel workers? That's what Albertans want to know. When I talk about...
Okay, so what tariffs? What sanctions?
Well, look... I've sat around the federal cabinet table calibrating tariffs. You choose things that will have a narrow impact, but maximum political impact on the steel and aluminum. They impose tariffs on bourbon, ketchup, aluminum bars, refrigerators, bicycles, washing machines, golf clubs. You know, it will be up to the federal government to come up with a package that is appropriate, proportionate, targeted, and effective.
You know, I spoke to the Canadian ambassador yesterday, Mark Arno. I spoke to the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Ambassador Hillman. They both said they were disappointed. They supported it, but they basically seemed prepared to move on. I think Justin Trudeau is going to raise the pipeline with Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden, and you know, Joe Biden's probably going to say, you know what? I ain't breaking a promise I made on my first night. The pipeline's gone. Let's move on to other issues. Then what? You think Justin Trudeau should say, okay, we're going to target you with sanctions? Is that, I'm just asking you, do you think that's the best way to start a relationship with a new president?
It's not us starting the relationship on a bad footing. We obviously, first of all, I congratulate President Biden, Vice President Harris on their inauguration. I wish them well, and we want to have a strong, productive relationship. But unfortunately, they made a decision to insult their closest ally and trading partner without even talking to us first. In terms of this being a campaign commitment, we didn't accept Trump's campaign commitment to rip up NAFTA, to impose steel and aluminum tariffs. We fought it. We were right to do so. By rolling over, I saw the foreign minister say we understand and respect the decision. The ambassador said we have to accept it and move forward. What that will invite is more aggression. The Democrat governor of Michigan is trying to decommission the Line 5 project that has safely delivered nearly 700,000 barrels of Alberta oil to Ontario.
But Prima, let me talk about that.
And all those folks are going to try to use this precedent to get a presidential presidential executive order to withdraw and decommission those pipelines. This is a very big deal, $100 billion of trade.
Okay, but let me just look. Because I talked to some PMO sources about that. This is the Enbridge Line 5, as you know. Gretchen Whitmer, who's the governor of Michigan, who wants to kill Enbridge Line 5, was also the co-chair of the inauguration committee. In November, you called the Biden people, including her, who opposed pipelines, and I'm quoting, brain dead. It was a big deal, you know that. The former governor of Michigan, who is Jennifer Granholm, is going to be the energy secretary. She was born in Canada, by the way. She also opposes it. I've heard that. The PMO said to you, hey, you really want to work with the Biden folks? You called them brain dead in November. You're opposing us on the carbon tax. These guys want to go green. You're not helping us save the pipeline. You've insulted them. What do you say to that?
Well, I didn't insult an individual. I said the decision to shut off Michigan's primary source of energy would be brain dead because they'd be inflicting damage on their own citizens. They would massively spike gasoline prices. They couldn't run airplanes out of Detroit Airport without the aviation fuel, and it would massively increase gasoline prices in southern Ontario. I was characterizing the nature of that decision, not the people making it. But here's the point, Evan. The same folks who pressured the Biden administration into this decision yesterday, contrary to the nearly 70% of Americans who support KXL, the unions, the First Nations who support it, they are trying to shut down all of the major pipelines that take Canadian energy to the United States, including Line 3, for example, through Minnesota. And they will be emboldened if Canada does not respond, because they now see that a president can retroactively eliminate a piece of critical infrastructure. We have to stand up for ourselves, just like we did on steel and aluminum.
And I should tell people, I think there are over 70 pipelines that run across that border, 70 pipelines. Jason Kenney, before I let you go, I just want to flip to vaccines. Next week, Pfizer will deliver 0 to Canada. Bubkas, they're retooling their plant in Belgium, but the Europeans are going to get back online faster than Canada. Impact on Alberta?
Well, terrible. We've ran out of vaccine this past weekend. We had the fastest pace of inoculation in the country. We've only been able to inoculate about 1%. Thankfully, we did get first doses out to our long-term care residents, but we need the second doses urgently for them. And this does concern me, that we're seeing a growing gap between vaccine supply for Canada versus Europe, the United States. I was speaking to my friend, the Israeli health minister, last week. They've not inoculated over a quarter of their population. He told me that Prime Minister Netanyahu had spoken 17 times with the global president of Pfizer to help to access that supply. Frankly, I don't see the same kind of effort by the government of Canada.
Okay. Yeah, well, I asked Minister Anand, the procurement minister, if the Prime Minister has or should get on the phone. She said, this is my file. She said it on this program on Monday. Do you think the Prime Minister should be calling Pfizer?
Absolutely. Clearly, there's politics is having something to do with the allocation of these vaccines. Europe is not being affected by the retooling of the Pfizer plant in Belgium. The United States, I understand, is getting 200 million doses. Israel has not inoculated a quarter of their population. Why is Canada at the back of the line? We need these vaccines desperately.
Jason, again, I got to leave it there. I appreciate your time, Premier. Thanks.